Da Dang. Chapter 6. We have since known each other long in the realm of dreams. May we now step together into the mortal world and make acquaintances. So, Xia Yulu wrote his question on a piece of Suxan paper using his calligraphy brush from Hu province and inkstick with silkworm patterns. Yet he received absolutely no reply in a total of 3 days. His correspondent was just like the last faint flicker of starlight on the top of the East Mountain, it shimmered suddenly and then it was gone. What kind of person is he? Xia Yulu couldn't help but wonder. Is he a scholar, or an educated merchant, or mayhap, he is an official just like me? The curiosity in his heart was immeasurable and indescribable, which felt as exuberant as trying to picture the look of the bride under the red veil on her wedding day. Yet, if they both felt the same curiosity, why did that person refuse to meet? Or could it be? Xia Yulu blushed all of a sudden, that he is a she? Perhaps a high-born lady, elegant and pretty? He got a little scared, worried that this was a young lady who hadn't been betrothed, and that he could be charged with indecent behavior. However, judging by the handwriting, it didn't look like it. It was hardly possible that a gentle lady would have such a powerful style of calligraphy. It certainly can't be that, this she, was a courtesan. Xia Yulu immediately panicked. Except for the officials' parties, he had never dealt with courtesan in private, therefore he reckoned himself to be honorable and pure, so how could he wet his shoes by having an affair with a confidant? Speaking of courtesans, he thought of Zushi in the north of Kiandao Bridge, the shaking female sedan chair and Ruan Dian. Indeed, eunuchs were regulars at the brothels, so no courtesan was innocent. Xia Yulu pinched himself hard. He actually compared that person to a eunuch. What disrespect! It was as though a bowl of clear water had a few drops of stinky ink inside, rendering it contaminated. Chun Chu! Chun Chu! Chu Feng called out next to Xia Yulu, waking him up abruptly from his absurd daydream. The slender incense sticks in his hands were almost burning towards the end, so he violently threw them away, shaking his sleeves as he did so. The two of them were standing by the road leading uphill towards Jibo Buddhist temple. The road was bustling as the pilgrims came to worship. Since it happened to be the 15th of the month, there were more pilgrims than usual who came to burn incense. "What's on your mind?" asked Chu Feng as he stared playfully at Xia Yulu. "Why, you've not been here long, and you already have someone." Xia Yulu felt self-conscious for no reason. "What are you talking about?" He shook the hem of his official robe and leaned closer to Chu Feng. Is there anyone who is famous for calligraphy in Nanjing?" "Certainly. Zha Yongtu from the Ministry of Rites and Liang Ke from Yushin Academy are both worthy of the Sheng Shao title." Chu Feng pointed towards the top of the mountain as a gesture for them to continue the climb. Where did this question come from? /Note, Sheng Shao was a title used to compliment those who are renowned for their calligraphy. Xia Yulu followed him and they went uphill. "Ah. I was just wondering." "Oh right, it is said that there's another one." Chu Feng unfolded his fan, as if he was about to reveal something rare. "It is." Just before he could finish the sentence, the voices of the pilgrims in front of them suddenly grew louder. Many of them were jammed on the road, waving their fists and complaining in anger. They went over to take a look. The closer they were to the temple, the more crowded it became. They found out what was going on when they reached the small Shanman. It turned out that the monks in the temple had blocked the road, allowing no one to get closer than 500 steps from the Mahavira Hall. /Notes 1. Shanman, also known as the Gate of Three Liberation, is the most important gate of a Chinese Buddhist temple. 2. Mahavira Hall is the main building/hall in a traditional Chinese temple where the Gautama Buddha and various Buddhas and Bodhisattvas were enshrined. It was evident that someone important was in here. Chu Feng and Xia Yulu exchanged a look and made a tactful decision to walk downhill. Within a few steps, they encountered a group of people rushing up. The leader was wearing a brocade robe and had a stern look. It was Tu Yao. Tu Yao was not an ordinary man. He had already spotted Xia Yula with a quick glance over the crowd, yet he pretended to not see him. He ordered 2 of his men to clear the crowded path for him, and then climbed steadily upwards with ease, his eyebrows slanted slightly upwards. The monk in charge noticed the arrival of the Jin Yi, so he approached the group very respectfully, wanting to explain. As soon as he got closer, the leading man of the group shoved him out of the way and arrogantly declared, "Arch 2 of the Jin Yi has arrived to offer dana on behalf of the Grand Supervising Eunuch of Nanjing. Make way." The bustling mountain road immediately fell silent, and only then did they hear the chanting of sutras in the Mahavira hall. The temple was holding a nirvana ritual. The Buddha told Ananda that long ago, on the south side of the snowy mountain, lived a golden peacock king. And each morning, he would recite the Dharani of Mahamayuri, the mother of the Buddha. It was the Mahamayuri Sutra. The common folks devoted to Buddhism all stood solemnly. Yet Tu Yao's men couldn't care less. They kept poking the stony ground with the tips of their long swords and urged, "We told you to move. Don't you hear?" Notes 1. Ananda was the primary attendant of the Buddha and was one of his 10 principal disciples. 2. Dharnis are the Buddhist chants or recitations. The monk in charge didn't move, nor did he speak. Tu Yao became impatient with the wait. He dusted his skirts with his Phoebewood Buddha beads bracelet, and asked with levity and indolent, "Who's inside?" The monk replied with his palms pressed together, "The kind Master Liao of the Weaving and Sewing Bureau." Tu Yao's hand that was dusting his skirt paused. After a while of silence, he replied in a casual and amicable tone, "We're both 4th-ranked officials. The Weaving and Sewing Bureau can enter the temple, but the Grand Supervising Eunuch of Nanjing cannot. What's wrong with the Jibo Buddhist temple?" He was about to lay the blame on the temple. Xia Yulo swallowed nervously. To witness the Grand Supervising Eunuch and the Chief of the Weaving and Sewing Bureau openly confronting each other was rare even in Beijing, not to mention in Nanjing. The monk couldn't answer, and just as Tu Yao was about to make more trouble, the door of the Mahavira hall opened and 2 people walked out, closing the door behind their backs. Although they were standing far away, Xia Yulo still immediately recognized that the 2 figures standing on the left and right of the door were Aliu and Zhang Chai. Both were wearing white yesa with lion and parrot patterns, and had official tokens hanging on their waists. Zhang Chai took a step forward and stood at the top of the stone steps. The wound on his head wasn't healed yet, so he wore a branch of begonia in his hair to cover the newly formed scar on his temple. "Who is making a ruckus?" he asked as he kicked up the hem of his yesa and held it in the crook of his arm, making a majestic pose. Tu Yao raised his head and tilted it in arrogance. He and his men were so conspicuous that Zhang Chai couldn't possibly overlook them. "Who is making a ruckus?" Zhang Chai asked again, intentionally dragging his voice. Tu Yao took him as a child and smiled half-heartedly. Seeing that, Zhang Chai lowered his gaze and glared at him in a fierce manner. Aliu rolled his eyes and carried the long sword on his back, ready to go down, but Zhang Chai stopped him with his hand pressing against Aliu's chest and yelled abruptly and violently at Tu Yao, "I'm asking who made the ruckus." Tu Yao's eyes turned from playfulness to freezing cold, and he stared back sullenly. "Tu Yao, from the Jin Yi." In response, Zhang Chai smiled like a real child. "So, it's Arch Tuesday." He cupped his hands and saluted casually. "Apologies." Hearing that, Tu Yao was ready to enter the temple, but the monk in charge stopped him again, which instantly lit up his anger. "What are you people of the Weaving and Sewing Bureau doing?" Zhang Chai was still full of smiles. "Nothing much," he deliberately strolled along the stone steps. "Our dugong is observing Zen in the hall, please wait a moment, Arch 2. "Ridiculous." With a flick of his hand, Tu Yao's men immediately dashed out from behind and ran upstairs, and the monk wouldn't be able to stop them at any time. Next, with a loud boom, another group of people with long swords came rushing out from the Manjusri Hall and Samantabhadra Hall, which were on both sides of the Mahavira Hall. They were all eunuchs dressed in white. Like a waterfall, they came pouring down the stone steps, until they reached the Jin Yi Wei's men. It was Liao Jixiang's eunuch army. Since long ago, rumor had it that he had a group of dozens of eunuchs which he brought to Nanjing from Gansu. Everyone in this group had killed the Tartars and had seen so much bloodshed. It was said that they survived because they were fierce enough to snatch their lives back from the temple of Yama. Note, Yama is the god of hell. Tu Yao and his men stopped advancing and instead retreated cautiously and even in horror. At that moment, a sudden dong sound on the main hall alarmed everyone below, causing them to all follow the sound and look up. It was Ruan Dian who exited the hall and slammed the door closed behind him. Seeing the situation outside, he burst into laughter. Our men were all in action, so I wondered what serious matter could it be. He giggled defiantly. It turned out to be Milarch too. He squatted down on the spot and swayed his body impishly on the highest stone step. Zhang Chai, he only brought a few men with him and you're playing with him like this. Don't you feel ashamed? He appeared to be scolding Zhang Chai, but it was Tu Yao who felt embarrassed. For someone like him, nothing could be more embarrassing than this. Tu Yao backed away with a gloomy face, and just as he retreated into the crowd, someone behind him yelled loudly, "Get out of the way." Tu Yao turned around and saw another group of eunuchs dressed in white coming uphill, with copper plates decorated with gold engravings in their hands. On each plate was a tower built out of silver ingots, each weighing 10 taels. The eunuch in the lead was Jin Tang. He tilted his head as he walked past Tu Yao, his pair of phoenix eyes were watery with a tinge of sarcasm. Milarch too, he glimpsed at his empty hands. Have you also come to make donations? Tu Yao's face instantly turned red. He didn't bring anything other than 5 notes that valued 100 taels each. Zheng Xian's annual donation to the temple all came from Tu Yao's pocket, as his filial gesture towards Zheng Xian. 500 taels was the best he could do. Vina, Jin Tang said respectfully to the monk in charge, please bring Master Tu to the meditation hall that I often use, find some well-behaved eloquent children to accompany him and make him a cup of hot tea. Those were some kind words, yet the words felt ill-intentioned here. Tu Yao's expression got worse and worse. Eventually, he gritted his teeth, flicked his sleeves and walked away. At the same time, someone among the pilgrims suddenly shouted, the plates contain no silver. They contain the dwarf pear trees of the common folks. Tu Yao froze, and everyone around was just as appalled as he was. Tu Yao turned around and noticed everyone staring sideways at a young man who was tall and had a gentle face. It was Xia Yulu from Beijing. Xia Yulu appeared at ease, but Chu Fen was so terrified next to him that he didn't even dare to pull Xia Yulu with his hand. On the top of the stone steps, Ruan Dian stood up slowly with his mouth opening wide. He was about to let out some harsh words when a delicate, almost ethereal voice reached the crowd from the temple, which spoke coldly, "Open the door." The chanting of the sutra stopped and the vermilion door with willow leaf carvings opened, letting the bright sunlight pour into the dark Mahavira hall, illuminating a tiny square of floor in front of the Buddha. There kneeled a man in a narrow-sleeved moon-white robe, turning his head towards the outside of the hall. Over his head hung the shiny golden lamps with flickering flames and burning incense, as well as the solemnly still and compassionate face of Shakyamuni Buddha. Xia Yulu was stunned. This man had a unique air about him, which had nothing to do with the fierce and aggressive eunuch army guarding on the stone stairs, and also had nothing to do with the high towers of silver ingots piling in the copper plates. What he saw in that man was not an arrogant display of power from his high position. Rather, it was a form of calmness that stemmed from deep within his soul. Is he Liao Jixiang? Xia Yulu was taken aback. He is so different from Zheng Xian. Zheng Xian is soaked through and through in his lavishness and fame of the mortal realm, while this man remains cold and distant. If he wasn't a ghost, then he must be one of the celestial beings. A strong and tall man bent down to support Liao Jixiang's hand, whom Xia Yulu recognized as Yishiha. Very carefully, He helped Liao Jixiang from the futon he kneeled on. This powerful eunuch was genuinely slender. His slim figure should have resembled a tall bamboo or a pike when he stood upright, but one would be disappointed seeing him make a step. His body swayed unsteadily as he walked, as he turned out to be a cripple. Dugong. All the eunuchs in white kneeled down in unison. The disciplined manner of their gait wasn't the norm for eunuchs of the weaving and sewing bureau. In fact, they were just as good or might even be better than the army guarding Nanjing. Liao Jixiang's left leg was limping, and it seemed that his knee was injured and couldn't support his weight. Yishiha followed him closely as if he was protecting a delicate young lady. Xie Yule was surprised by his figure. His waist was so slender, that it appeared like Xie Yule could hold it or easily bend it with a single hand. He was wearing a robe with Kylin embroideries and had a tiny face as fair as snowflakes with fine facial features. He wasn't even close yet, but Xie Yule had already caught a trace of sandalwood scent in the midst of the scent of grass and leaves, which was brought to him by the spring breeze. And if he examined the scent meticulously, he could also spot the smell of sweet milk. Yishiha hastened to help him down. Since he was standing on the stairs, Liao Jixiang looked downwards, making him appear a little condescending. His eyes were exquisitely shaped with its delicate double eyelids, and his lips were of a shape common in bodhisattva statues, which were not necessarily beautiful but very plump. He stared at Xie Yule peacefully and asked, "What's your name?" Xie Yule had never been so close to a dignitary while they were looking at each other, so he couldn't help but become fascinated by Liao Jixiang. "Your name?" Yishiha urged, and Xie Yule blushed as he stuttered out his name. Liao Jixiang's cold face showed no other expression, while Jin Tang, Ruan Dian, Zhang Chai and Aliu all waited on him without a single blink. Ruan Dian. Eventually, Liao Jixiang tilted his head and picked the anon. "Do you remember?" What would be an appropriate description of Ruan Dian's expression? Just like how an aggressive dog that was used to fighting outside would still show his belly in front of the owner and wag his tail happily, so did Ruan Dian reply, "I remember." Liao Jixiang coughed and caught Yishiha's hand. As soon as Aliu saw his movements, he went downhill to clear the road for him, and the common folks moved away as if they were avoiding the god of plague. In the meantime, Yishiha squatted down while standing on the stairs and carried Liao Jixiang on his back like he was just carrying a feather. The eunuchs from the weaving and sewing bureau retreated in batches, and the pilgrims who passed the small shanmen were chattering incessantly. Amidst their chatter and curse, Xie Yule heard Chu Feng saying, "Don't go out for the next 2 days. There really is no need." He forced a smile, deliberately acting like he couldn't care less. "At worst, I will be demoted again, to Liaodong." /Note, Liaodong is located in northeast China. It is a very cold and sparsely populated region in ancient China. Chu Feng tugged at him and stared at him angrily with a pair of beautiful almond eyes. "He just called Ruan Dian." Xie Yule was puzzled. Chu Feng fell silent at first and then sighed. "If he called Jin Tang, your life could still be spared." And so, Xie Yule understood. He would be too slow-witted if he still couldn't comprehend Chu Feng's worry. He remained quiet for a while, and said, "Let them come. I'll wait." To which Chu Feng had no reply. On their return to the city from Jibo Buddhist Temple, Xie Yule parted with Chu Feng and hurried to Lingfu Temple. He searched the stone lamp again and again, but still to no avail. That person didn't want to see him. He raised his empty hands and sat down in the newly grown lawn. He felt forlorn and maybe a trace of frustration, too. So, he lowered his head heavily against his chest. Returning home with mud on his bottom, he dived into the study to spread paper and grind the ink stick. He rolled up his sleeves several times, wanting to write, yet again came helplessly to a stop. Suddenly, a tear dropped on the paper. He wiped it away vigorously and wrote hastily, "I am now trapped between life and death, between honor and disgrace. My fate awaits its sentence between the night and the day. And what my soul desires and my dream longs for, is only to meet you. End chapter. Dang. Chapter 7. This time, Xiaolu received a reply the next night, which was written in small characters and phrased in an obscure manner. The words were arranged into 3 columns, with the first column started with Sarara, Bailing Bridge, the second column reading Postponement of a Splendid Day, and the third column reading Withering of the Pear Blossoms, Dying Down of the Plum-Smelling Winds. He frowned and pondered on it for a long time, but he still couldn't figure it out. The next morning when he went to the ministry, he took the letter with him. After signing his attendance, he went straight to Chu Feng's office and found excuses to kill time there. Chu Feng was busy with the New Year's administration tasks. He looked up at Xiaolu several times, who remained silent and not responding. Chu Feng got so annoyed by his presence that he ordered his clerk to leave, then he asked sternly, "What's going on?" Xiaolu looked embarrassed. He locked the door tightly and checked the lock again and again before slowly fishing out the paper from his pocket. "I have something that I wish you to take a look at." "What's?" Chu Feng put on a serious look initially, but when he saw the paper, he burst out laughing. Worried about being heard by people outside, Xiaolu immediately reached out to cover Chu Feng's mouth, which Chu Feng smartly did by himself. Chu Feng raised his pinky wearing a white jade ring and asked, "Didn't you say you don't have a sweetheart?" "No, not a sweetheart." Xiaolu panicked. "It's just a correspondence." "A correspondence?" Chu Feng leaned closer, and the strong fragrance of benzoin surrounded Xiaolu again. "And you're trying to fool me with this?" He patted Xiaolu's chest lightly. "Do you think you can?" Xiaolu felt cornered, so he had to tell the truth. "I don't even know if that's a man or a woman." "You will know tomorrow." Chu Feng turned to him with a teasing look and glanced at the letter with a hint of intimacy and ambiguity. "This is an invitation." Xiaolu's face turned red and he appeared to be bashful and excited as he asked, "Really?" He leaned so close to Chu Feng and was very eager. "What does it say?" Chu Feng smiled as he inspected his silly expression. Pointing to the word Sarara, he said, "This is a 10, derived the homophone of she. His finger shifted backwards and landed on Bailing Bridge. "So," Xiaolu followed his example and guessed, "is this an 8? "Yep, so that adds up to 18. Chu Feng said. 18th. That's tomorrow." Xiaolu's hand grabbing the letter became sweaty. "Then, how about postponement of a splendid day? How do you explain the 5? This column implies the time. Sui, Zhou, Yin, Mao, and the 5th is the hour of Chen." Chu Feng continued. "Withering of the pear blossoms is Xiao, dying down of the plum-smelling winds means Lao." Chu Feng pondered for a moment. "It means Xiaolao Fountain. It's 3.5 miles south of Liamanpo, in the west of the city." Notes 1. Hour of Sui is 11 p.m. to 1 a.m. 2 hour of Zhou is 1 to 3 a.m. 3 hour of Yin is 3 to 5 a.m. 4 hour of Mao is 5 to 7 a.m. 5 hour of Chen is 7 to 9 a.m. Xiaolu had a bright smile on his face, which appeared to be exceptionally full of happiness. Seeing that smile, Chu Feng wanted to persuade him not to go. This is a code language commonly used by courtesans. Xiaolu's smile visibly froze and he tugged at the corner of his mouth, trying to speak. "If she has the leisure to exchange letters with me, she must have been having a hard time. Such beautiful calligraphy." Chu Feng she spoke frankly, "she can't be an ordinary woman." After leaving the ministry, Xiaolu dropped by the Confucian temple on his way home. There were already stalls selling kites and he could see the glowing candle light from countless red candles across the Qinhua River. Amidst the candle lights were the incessant sounds of musical instruments and the playful laughter of men and women. Xiaolu was standing on the opposite side of the bank. The noisier the river became, the more solitary he felt. Kicking pebbles all by himself, he walked along the riverbank towards a quieter place. The folks residing on both sides of the river were lighting their stoves for cooking. Occasionally, some old ladies would come out to wash their clothes. The smell of smoke and burning wood, the taste of salt and oil in the air, and the loud but intermittent chatter of children all made him feel sorrowfully homesick. He recalled the second household east of the mill lane where his wife resided, as well as the old pagoda tree that he was so used to climbing when he was a child. However, tomorrow, he was going to meet a courtesan in Nanjing, a city thousands of miles away from home. As he wandered, a tall figure approached him. Upon a closer look, he stopped immediately. The person wearing a jade-colored yesa and carrying a long sword was Yeshiha. Yeshiha followed Ruan Dian's order. Xiaoyulo took a step back, and in a split second even thought about running. "Don't go out for the next 2 days, Chu Feng had said. Would he meet his inevitable fate here and now? Xiaoyulo knew he had no chance against him, but he still took a fighting stance. However, Yeshiha only brushed past him and walked ahead. As Yeshiha went past him, Xiaoyulo clearly heard him say, "Go home, immediately. Go home." Xiaoyulo turned around abruptly. "Why are you?" Yeshiha didn't even stop. "For the fabric you tore off that day to bandage Achai." Before he finished the sentence, a person suddenly dashed out of the alley, startling both Yeshiha and Xiaoyulo. Before they could respond, the person ran across the stone-paved road and jumped into the river with a loud splash. It was a completely naked woman whose hair was disheveled. She wasn't an assassin sent by Ruan Dian but a young maid who had been cheated for her virginity. Similar things happened way too often by the Qinhua River. However, in the blink of an eye, Yeshiha had already dived into the river. The river was rushing towards the east, the water level high from the spring rain. The girl struggled violently and desperately, dragging Yeshiha down with her. All Xiaoyulo could do was to remain anxiously on the shore, and Yeshiha yelled at him from the river. "I told you to leave. Are you deaf?" Xiaoyulo stamped his foot and rushed along the residential buildings, and managed to find a long bamboo ladder leaning against the wall of a 3-story tall house. He carried it back and threw it into the water using both hands. The woman was determined to take her own life. She kept on struggling and fighting, so to keep her safely in his arms, Yeshiha could only paddle with one hand. When he got closer to the ladder, he put the woman on it first and then swam as he pushed her towards the shore. Xiaoyulo helped to pull the woman onto the shore and the water from her splashed towards his body and face. He was about to pull Yeshiha, when 2 guys wearing headscarves came up from behind. They looked at the woman, then at Xiaoyulo, and pulled out machetes hanging from their waists. They must be hired guards from the brothel. Xiaoyulo retreated awkwardly until he reached the shore. Suddenly, a splashing sound appeared from behind. Seeing Yeshiha emerging from the water, the 2 fighters turned and fled in a hurry. The woman was curling up on the ground and crying, so Xiaoyulo dared not touch her. On the other hand, Yeshiha seemed indifferent to her grief. He stretched his shoulder and began to remove his clothes. Xiaoyulo stared at him in a daze, watching him as he revealed his strong, scar-covered upper body. Very quickly, he wrung out the water from his yesa and draped it over the woman. Probably out of resentment or irreconcilable feelings, the woman grabbed Yeshiha's arm and bit down hard. She bit so hard that even Xiaoyulo felt the pain just from looking at it. In response, Yeshiha didn't hesitate and slapped her with force. The woman was knocked over to the ground and didn't lift her head for a long time. Her wet long hair matted on her face, making it difficult to see her features clearly. Yeshiha didn't utter a word, nor did he try to look away from her bouncy breasts and soft body. Instead, he turned to Xiaoyulo and said, "Go now." Xiaoyulo should leave indeed. He turned and ran towards where he came from, where there was a constant stream of people and the Confucian temple. Not long after he left Yeshiha's sight, a light and nimble footstep caught up with him, so Xiaoyulo panicked and took the wrong turn. The deeper he went, the quieter the surrounding became, and soon he came to a dead end. He had to turn around and face his fate. Removing his official cap, Siayulo straightened on tiptoe to hang it over the branches. The sky was just getting dark, casting disorganized shadows from the wheat growing on the roof over Siayulo's head. Siayulo heard a crunching sound as a person emerged from the sinister silhouettes of the trees, who had a short stature and carried a long sword on his back. It was Eliu. In a split second, Siayulo felt lucky as his opponent was merely a child. Yet when Eliu twisted his body and skillfully drew the long sword from his back, when the moonlight illuminated the blade and reflected the silvery light into his cold eyes, Siayulo realized that those eyes did not belong to that of a child. In those eyes he observed a vast darkness, which came from millions of drops of blood and contained a vision of hell. It was as expected. Before Siayulo could prepare himself, the long sword had already swung towards him, slashing his chest, legs, and cheeks open. He wouldn't say it was painful, as it felt more like a burning sensation. Hot blood came gushing out of the ugly wounds. It soaked his official robes and dripped on the ground, making him slip and fall. In his side was a huge round moon and Eliu's face as he approached him. As the situation was already at its worst, Siayulo was no longer afraid. He realized that from his perspective, Eliu looked pretty. He had a pair of round eyes with fluffy eyelashes just like a small animal, such as a cat. Eliu squatted down. He folded his elbow and used it to hit Siayulo's face hard twice. Blood immediately overflowed backward in his nose. Siayulo whimpered and coughed as Eliu kept on touching and turning his cheek, as if he was scrutinizing his work. Give me." The moment Siayulo's mouth opened, blood spurted out. He felt strange as he didn't feel much pain even though he had lost so much blood. "Give me a quick end." So, Eliu raised his long knife and pressed the sharp edges against the root of Siayulo's neck. He clasped Siayulo's chin and forced it upwards, and with a light swipe of the blade, he withdrew the long sword and walked away. Siayulo felt his blood slowly oozing out of his throat, but it didn't gush out as violently as he had expected. Is this what death feels like? He blinked, and just as he was about to close his eyes, he saw Eliu coming back, holding a big calico cat in his hand. Before Siayulo could marvel at how much Eliu and the cat looked alike, scorching hot cat blood came splashing down on him. It was then that Siayulo felt something was wrong. He struggled to stare at Eliu, who made sure to pour cat blood all over his body and then threw the dead cat onto the roof with a casual toss. Siayulo stretched out his hand, trying to grab something. This. Eliu strode towards him and stepped across his face. He grabbed Siayulo by the clothing on his shoulder and pulled him towards the main road. Due to the loss of blood, Siayulo began to feel a bit dizzy and said, "It is also," he coughed, "because of Zhang Chai." His body shivered and he felt that he could pass out any minute. "How would you explain saving me, when you report back?" Yet he received no reply from Eliu. In fact, Eliu hadn't uttered a word this entire evening. He dropped Siayulo in the middle of the road and casually picked up a stick to knock on the stone slabs, making a muffled sound. Siayulo knew he was trying to make some noise to attract people's attention. But why not just shout? He was mocking the child for being foolish and was just about to call out to him when he heard a jarring noise. A pile of firewood that was half a floor high was kicked and collapsed. Soon after, the folks came shouting and running with lanterns in their hands. Siayulo was in a daze and saw countless faces moving before his eyes. Men, women, the young and the old, yet none of them wanted to lend a helping hand. The situation remained until someone spoke up in a trembling voice, "He's an official. If we don't save him, we'll all be damned." Only then did someone come to lift him up. They probably used a bamboo ladder that hurt his back as it swayed and creaked. He fell into a slumber and then woke up again from the back pain, not knowing whether he was in the reality or in a dream. He heard the sound of neatly marching footsteps and saw the uniform armor and cold long spears. The folks who carried him were whispering, It's the Zhejiang army. Why did they enter the city? Xia Yulu turned his head and saw a long line of soldiers. Leading the line was a black horse, and hanging from the saddle was a corner of blue yesa. It was the same color that he had seen before. His arm slipped off the bamboo ladder as he frowned and moved his lips. Just before he lost consciousness completely, he had one final thought. Tomorrow at the hour of Chen, the meeting at the Xiaolao fountain, Li Amanpo. I won't be able to make it. End chapter. Dang. Chapter 8. The door to the courtyard was creaking. De Tian had returned. With much difficulty, Xia Yulu sat up from the blankets and leaned against the headboard, his body tilted to one side. It was the 10th day since his injury and he could already get out of bed and walk around. A doctor had come to check on him and concluded that his wounds were in fact shallow, despite the amount of blood he had lost. Indeed, none of the dozen cuts injured any vital organs, and the one on his neck was even more of a joke. It was already nothing but a light pink scar now that he examined it again. He had been in a coma during the first 2 days and his colleagues from the ministry were taking turns to visit him. In addition, many local gentry and common folks came to pay respect, too. They treated him as a hero who risked his life for the people, so Xia Yulu's name was suddenly very renowned. De Tian pushed the door open and entered. It was raining outside and half of his sleeve was wet. He shook his clothes and fished out a piece of paper from his chest pocket. Master, I've went to retrieve it but there's nothing written here. Xia Yulu held the paper in his hands and saw that it was indeed blank, a clean piece of paper with not a single character written. Ah, he sighed. It was him who broke the promise, so it was expected and reasonable for his correspondent to reply with a blank paper in ridicule. My calligraphy brush, he stretched out his hand to De Tian, get the one with the spotted bamboo handle. And so De Tian went to his study. Not recognizing which one had the spotted bamboo handle, he brought everything over, including the calligraphy brush holder and the inkstone. Xia Yulu poured some sugar water from his nightstand onto the inkstone to dissolve the leftover ink, and wrote down 2 words in running script, gravely ill. Seeing that, De Tian asked, Master, this. So, I'll also need to put this back. Sorry for the trouble. Xia Yulu blushed as he waved the letter in the air to let it dry, then folded the paper and passed it to him. De Tian was not pleased. Fine, I'll go and return quickly, he helped Xia Yulu lie down. You have no idea. It was totally chaotic outside and soldiers were everywhere. They've arrested a few, and the common folks aren't happy with it. They might cause more trouble. Xia Yulu felt as if someone was pulling on his nerves. Arrested? Why? It's all about the dwarf pear trees. De Tian said as he walked out. It's not the weaving and sewing bureau that's cutting down the trees anymore. It's now the soldiers from Zhejiang. He went under the eaves to put up his umbrella and continued as he walked towards the door to the courtyard. Soldiers won't care what kind of life you're living. If you dare to even glare at them, they'll arrest you. His words drifted further away in the sound of rain, and Xia Yulu was filled with apprehension. A short while later, the familiar voice returned again. Yes, be careful of the water. As he walked to the door, De Tian yelled, Master! Master Chu is here. Xia Yulu smiled brightly and forced himself to sit up. Why are you coming every day? The door opened, and Chu Feng was admitted in. He was wearing a strikingly red robe embroidered with gold threads, his face was powdered and his body heavily perfumed. The outfit brought out the radiance in his face. I missed you so much that I can't sit still, all right. His stride had an elegant, carefree, and confident air. As he sat down at ease on the bed, he said, the minister had announced today during the department's meeting that the cost of your treatment will be covered by the ministry. De Tian helped Xia Yulu sit up and then left to deliver the letter, so there were only the 2 of them left in the room. Xia Yulu asked rather embarrassed, it was you who pushed for the coverage of my treatment, isn't it? Don't worry about it. Chu Feng patted his skinny hand, trying to comfort him. Even if the money didn't go to you, they'll just spend it on feasting and drinking anyway. Feeling grateful, Xia Yulu accidentally put his hand on top of Chu Feng's. The two grown men exchanged a look and each felt secretly awkward about what just happened. Xia Yulu changed the subject. You're all dressed up. What's the occasion? What else could it be? Smiled Chu Feng, as he discreetly withdrew his hand. I accompanied the one at home for a visit to her family. It's her father's birthday today, so the celebration dragged on for half a day. By the way, ask Xia Yulu, has the Zhejiang army arrested people? His body leaned forward, didn't the ministry say anything? Chu Feng leaned towards him, too. Now that you've mentioned this, it is very odd. He adjusted the pillow so that Xia Yulu could rest more comfortably against it. The Ministry of War didn't say a word regarding the uninformed advance of the Zhejiang army into Nanjing. Xia Yulu knew that this was the deed of Mei Azha. He came to notify the minister the other night. What's the progress on cutting down the trees? Almost done. Before the end of this month, all the trees would have been cut down. Xia Yulu's expression turned solemn. Chu Feng understood that he was worried, so he intentionally teased him. You didn't meet that one, did you? His pinky reached out from his sleeve and poked Xia Yulu's chest. Lai Amanpo, Xiaolao Fountain. Xia Yulu smiled very shyly and shook his head. It's a good thing that you didn't meet her. Chu Feng studied his bruised and swollen face. That kind of woman is high maintenance. Xia Yulu stared at the light pattering drizzle outside his window and didn't reply. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. He received the respond the following day, I worry and fear for thee. He fell silent for quite a while after reading these 6 words. It was as if the summer breeze was bringing in the sweet scent of Cape jasmine, or the impulsive and restless passion was rushing in his heart. He immediately replied. In 3 days' time, at Xiaolao Fountain, outside Lai Amanpo. Pondered for a second, then he added, I'm not leaving until I meet you. De Tian was tasked to deliver the letter again, and his correspondent soon replied in the affirmative. On the day of their promised meeting, Xia Yulu especially brought the hand fan with the written words Thou art my boat and oar and wore a robe of black silk. De Tian helped to arrange the carriage, and he kept on nagging as he helped Xia Yulu up. Why do you have to go out when you aren't fully recovered, yet? And you are going to such a rural place. What if anything goes wrong? Xia Yulu didn't know if he should scold him or laugh at him. Why can't you just wish me luck? De Tian told the coachman to depart as he stood outside the shed. Amidst the sound of the whip, he whispered into the carriage. You should look at your swollen face. No woman would like that. The horse began to move, so was the carriage behind it. Xia Yulu lifted the curtain of the carriage and replied, Who told you that I'm meeting a woman? De Tian mumbled as he returned to the chamber, his short figure appearing further and further away as the carriage went on. Xia Yulu felt both angry and helpless. Dropping the curtain of the carriage, he was suddenly somewhat ashamed of himself. It took him some effort to keep a straight face, but eventually he couldn't help but smile. The ride wasn't short, as it started off from the east of the city, passing by the entire Nanjing to reach the city's west, and Lai Amanpo was even further ahead. The coachman was not of a chatty type, so along the way Xia Yulu had to keep company with his anxiety, leaning against the carriage's window. In less than 2 hours, the coachman knocked on the handle and said, Mister, we're here. Once you got off, you'll have to walk for a bit. Xiaolao Fountain was hidden deep in a willow tree forest, so a carriage couldn't reach there. Even if it could, the coachman wouldn't allow it. Xia Yulu strolled slowly, as his body still hurt if he walked too fast. Following the river, he went upstream. The shiny spots of light cast from the tall branches and the gurgling sound of fountain water made him feel incredibly relaxed, but suddenly, He stopped. A figure was standing down the grass slope in front of him. It is a man. Xia Yulu couldn't tell whether he was relieved or disappointed. He didn't rush to greet him. The man was wearing a white robe that couldn't be more plain. He wore no scarf on his head and his long hair was casually tied with a red headband which was a current fashion, and it hung from the back of his head, fluttering in the wind. It's him. It should be him. Xia Yulu looked around and saw that there was no one else beside the two of them. He wanted to go downhill, but just as he took a step, the man turned to look at him, a snow-white face with exquisitely shaped eyes, delicate double eyelids and lips in the shape common on bodhisattva statues, which were not necessarily pretty but very plump. When the wind rose, a scent of sandalwood was carried towards Xia Yulu. Dumbfounded, Xia Yulu became frozen, clenching his fists and standing still. His mind was ringing non-stop and even his breathing was disturbed and came to a pause. Last time at Jibo Buddhist temple, he was the one at the bottom of the staircase looking up. And this time, it was the other way around, as he was the one standing high. Liao Jixiang was just as shocked. He looked up in dismay, at the pale pink scar on Xia Yulu's neck and at the ugly, colored bruises on Xia Yulu's entire face, exactly the consequences of his order. For a very long time, neither of them spoke. Suddenly, Xia Yulu turned around enraged. Enduring the pain, he dashed away following the path he came from. End chapter.